am a little older than the 20-year-old when you first saw me.
স্যার আপনি ভালো আছেন? আমি বিমল বলছি। ভালো আছেন স্যার?
হ্যাঁ,
প্রণাম নেবেন।
আমি ভালো আছি। তোমার খোঁজ নিচ্ছিলাম প্রথমে, তখন তোমারটা মিউট করা ছিল। হ্যাঁ, তোমাকে খেয়াল করেছি আগে।
প্রণাম নেবেন। ভালো
আশীর্বাদ করি সবাই।
কাশীনাথ তো মনে হয় এখন ইউএসএই আছে, কাশীনাথকে দেখছি এখানে।
ও আচ্ছা।
রেকর্ডিং শুরু হয়েছে, আমরা কি এবার শুরু করবো তাহলে অরিন্দম দা?
স্যার আমরা তাহলে শুরু করি স্যার।
হ্যাঁ
হ্যাঁ হিমাল,
ওকে, থ্যাংক ইউ সুমন্ত দা। On behalf of Calcutta Statistical Association, we welcome all of you to this lecture series for propagation of statistics education and research. This lecture series is being organized by Calcutta Statistical Association as a part of its outreach program. The association was established in 1945 to promote activities related to statistics. So we are organizing this lecture series as a part of celebrating 75 years of CSA's glorious existence. We had received huge response for this program. However, owing to the restrictions on the number of participants in Google Meet, we apologize for not being able to include all of you in the Google Meet. So we have also arranged for live streaming on YouTube. To deliver the inaugural lecture, we have with us today Professor S.P. Mukherjee. Before starting off with the inaugural lecture, I would now request Professor Monisha Pal, President of Calcutta Statistical Association, to deliver the welcome address.
Thank you, Dhiman. A very good evening to all of you and welcome to the first lecture of the outreach program. Now, this program is basically to spread statistics education through popular level lectures in statistics by eminent statisticians. As we all know, or as Dhiman has already indicated, this program, it is being organized by Calcutta Statistical Association, and I would like to say a few words about the association because there may be many in the audience who are not who do not know much about the association. Now, the Calcutta Statistical Association, which in short we call CSA, that is an international learned society, and it is closely associated with the Department of Statistics of Calcutta University. Many of us know that the Department of Statistics of Calcutta University, that was established in 1941 with the legendary Professor P.C. Mahalanobis as the head. And that department is the oldest postgraduate department in Asia to offer a course in statistics. The department has also nurtured and produced many eminent statisticians who have distinguished themselves in India and abroad. Close to its heels, the Calcutta Statistical Association was formed in 1945 by stalwarts in the Department of Statistics. And the aim was to promote activities related to statistics and its allied fields. Now, at present, we have many life members of the associations who are renowned statisticians from different parts of the world. On a regular basis, the association organizes lectures, seminars, workshops, and symposia, generally in collaboration with the Department of Statistics. Apart from academics, the association also rewards meritorious students of the department with book prizes and provides partial monetary help to students on merit and need basis. Now, as you know, we have an internationally circulated journal, Calcutta Statistical Association Bulletin, that also belongs to the association, and it is published by the SAGE Publications. Now, previously too, the association had organized such series of popular level lectures by eminent statisticians. At that time, the lectures were held in different colleges, and the lectures were delivered by, as I said, eminent statisticians. If I remember correctly, the first lecture was held in the Department of Statistics of St. Xavier's College, and the lecture was delivered by Professor S.P. Mukherjee. Today, we have Sir Professor S.P. Mukherjee with us as the speaker. Incidentally, Professor Mukherjee was my PhD research supervisor. Now, Sir is a renowned personality from the statistics fraternity. He really does not need any introduction, especially to those who are even remotely associated with statistics. However, as a convention, I'd request Dr. Dhiman Datta, the Secretary of the Association, to give a formal introduction of Professor Mukherjee to the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. I will request all the participants except the speaker to kindly turn off your microphones. We will now start our inaugural lecture of this lecture series. I will request the participants to write their questions to the speaker in the comment box only. We'll have a discussion session at the end of the lecture. To deliver the inaugural lecture, we have with us today Professor S.P. Mukherjee, former Centenary Professor of Statistics, University of Calcutta, and former President of Calcutta Statistical Association. Professor Mukherjee has done extensive research in different areas of statistics, including reliability analysis and operations research. He was the President of Operational Research Society of India, as well as of the Association of Asian Pacific Operational Research Societies. He was also a Vice President of the International Federation of Operational Research Societies. He was one of the founder members of Indian Association for Productivity, Quality and Reliability. He has served as its chairman and member of different important committees. Professor Mukherjee has received many awards and recognitions, which includes Professor P.V. Sukhatme Award for Senior Statistician, P.C. Mahalanobis Birth Centenary Award. Of course, someone like Professor S.P. Mukherjee needs no introduction, so may I now request Professor Mukherjee to start his deliberation.
Good evening and welcome, everybody. It's a great pleasure to meet all of you and to just deliver what is called a popular lecture, because I will not be talking about any technical aspects of stratified sampling, etc. When Shumanto Adho, a former student, approached me for this lecture, I readily agreed, simply because I knew that in such a program I would be able to meet some of my former students and former acquaintances whom for the last several years I have not the opportunity to meet. That was the prime motivation behind my acceptance of the request by Shumanto Adho. Of course, I owe a moral responsibility to the Calcutta Statistical Association, and therefore a request from the association cannot be turned down by me. I had agreed to speak on some problems in using stratified sampling, and I should frankly admit right at the beginning that I have not done any research on sampling methodologies. I have really, in my stock, some involvement in the planning and conduct of several sample surveys, essentially by the Indian statistical system, conducted by the government of India and sometimes conducted by a few other national organizations like the Indian Statistical Institute. And ever since my retirement from the university service way back in 2004, I have been somehow or the other involved in some of these sample surveys. And since the talk was meant to benefit even students, undergraduate as well as postgraduate students of statistics, I thought that I need not really bring out technical aspects of the problem, but can definitely talk about those problems at a more general, popular level. I'm aware that I have in the audience a whole host of very well-known statisticians, some of whom have done considerable research in the area of sampling methodologies. They are more knowledgeable than me, at least in the area of sampling. But even then, I would like to attempt something like a popular lecture on some problems associated with the use of stratified sampling. We are all familiar with sampling and sample surveys, and I recall that when censuses had not been formally introduced, even to get the complete count of the population of a country, it was sampling that was adopted by the French mathematician Laplace to conduct what has been recognized in the history of statistics as the first census of France, conducted in 1802, roughly about 220 years back. This was based on sampling. So this was a population census based on sampling and on a certain number of assumptions, like the average number of members in a household. So once you get an idea about the number of households in a particular area, we also try to estimate the number of households in the entire country, and then getting an idea about the average number of members in a household, we try to get an idea about the total population in the country. Something of this sort. I mean, that was a more detailed study conducted by Laplace, but briefly, this was the approach adopted by the great French mathematician Laplace to conduct what has been recognized formally as the first population census. I also remember the fact that for the 1941 Indian population census, because of the Second World War having started, the figures that came out were not found to be that credible. And the then Census Commissioner, he suggested that we should have a 2% sample of the census data to verify the records, or to have a check on the quality of census data. He suggested a 2% sample check. This is famous in the history of Indian census as the Y sample. Y standing for the initial letter in the name of the Census Commissioner, ITS. So that way sampling has been a well-established procedure for collecting data, not always for administrative purposes, but even for scientific purposes, we have been using sampling. We have been using sampling because complete counts are ruled out in many cases. In some cases, they are ruled out on ethical considerations, like in bioassay experiments. You cannot conduct an experiment on each and every animal because that may produce lethal effects on them, and therefore ethics rules out a complete count or an experiment to be conducted on all the animals which are available or accessible. In many cases, resources, including time and cost, will not allow you to conduct a complete count. And in many other situations, we believe that a more carefully designed and conducted sample survey will yield better data than a complete count. For all such reasons, sampling has definitely gained a lot of importance. And it was Professor P.C. Mahalanobis, who is famous for having conducted one of the large-scale sample surveys in Bengal Presidency, the famous Bengal Jute survey. That was when it was Bengal Presidency, including Bihar as a part of Bengal. And the idea was to estimate the acreage under jute cultivation as also the yield of jute crop. That was more or less a large-scale survey on the basis of sampling attempted by Mahalanobis. You all know that Professor Mahalanobis was the chairman of the United Nations Subcommission on sampling. In fact, Maulana took a great initiative in encouraging various countries of the world to make use of sampling to generate data on various aspects, political, economic, social, in their respective domains. In India also, within the very strong and large statistical system, we have been making use of surveys. The very famous socio-economic surveys have been going on. And in most of these surveys, as also in surveys conducted by other agencies, a very popular sampling design is multi-stage stratified sampling. Multi-stage because surveys are quite often on a national level or at least on a state level, and the ultimate units to be reached from which responses have to be elicited, there are too many and they cannot be reached directly in the absence of a complete list of all those units. And therefore, we try to reach these units which have to ultimately respond through certain stages. Like in the case of a national survey, we may possibly first form some first stage units, which are typically either villages or urban blocks or census enumeration blocks. These could be called first stage units. Then we may come down to households which are located within some selected villages or selected urban blocks or enumeration blocks. And then ultimately coming to some selected households, we will come to the individuals from whom some information items have to be collected. So the individual from whom some information items have to be collected, they are the ultimate stage units. They are being located within households, which are the second stage units, and the households are being located within villages or urban frame survey blocks or enumeration blocks, which could be the first stage sampling units or first stage units. So that way several stages are introduced. And in the first stage or in the second stage, we purposefully introduce stratification so as to form more or less homogeneous clusters or strata. And from each such cluster or stratum, we will select a suitable sample. So that way, multi-stage stratified sampling design is a very commonly accepted sampling design in many large-scale sample surveys. And when we collect data, we definitely collect data on a variety of types, in the sense that some information items could be purely ordinal, some could be qualitative in the sense that they are categorical data, and some could be numerical, broadly called quantitative. So you have a variety of information items which are typically collected from each responding unit. And the responding unit could be an individual, could be a household, could be an industrial establishment, could be a government department, or could be any such entity in respect of which we would like to collect information on several information items. It is also true that ultimately we would like to arrive at certain estimates of either a total or an average, maybe a mean, or it could be an estimate of a proportion, sometimes a ratio, in respect of a particular variable. Although to get that estimate, we may have to get information about some related variables as well. So we sometimes classify variables about which information items are collected as estimation variables and auxiliary variables. I first consider a very simple situation where you have got only one estimation variable, one variable in respect of which we can definitely think of a certain distribution of that variable. We can think of associated parameters which are unknown and which are to be estimated in terms of the sample data. To get a very good estimate or a reasonably good estimate, we may definitely make use of some information about some of the auxiliary variables or may not do so, depending on the procedure that we are going to adopt, depending on other considerations as well. So in a very simple situation, I'm talking of only one estimation variable and for the time being not involving any auxiliary variable. As if this is a univariate survey focused entirely on one estimation variable, and I would like to estimate only one parameter in respect of that variable. Could be a total or an average or a proportion or a ratio. For example, why currently? I mean, quite often in many countries, we are interested in getting estimates of parameters which are linked up with the employment situation in the country. We are all worried about employment, unemployment situations. And that way, we may try to find out what is called the labor force participation rate. In the entire population, what is the proportion of the entire population in the, of course, eligible age group who are involved in the labor force, who participate in the labor force with an appropriate definition of labor force, which I did not discuss right here. Or we can take the labor force as already defined, and we may try to get at what is called the unemployment rate, which is a very important parameter to indicate the development situation in a country. So that way, rates and ratios are very important. We may try to find out what is the total number of migrant workers in our country or in a particular state who have migrated out of that particular state in search of jobs or to be placed on jobs in other states or in other countries even. We may want to find out what is the average income or average earning of a domestic worker who does domestic jobs more or less regularly in other households. So something like a total, an average, a proportion, or a ratio are the parameters to be estimated. And for the time being, I'm not taking recourse to any auxiliary variable to throw more light on the estimation variable. In some cases, the estimation variable is purely categorical. I'm classifying individuals as employed, unemployed. I'm classifying individuals as not in the labor force, within the labor force employed, within the labor force unemployed. Or I am classifying individuals on the basis of, as I said, the income earned or the establishment based on the number of workers and so on and so forth. Now, when I come to taking advantage of stratification or make use of stratified sampling, as you all know, there will be basically two problems. The first is the problem of identifying strata which are homogeneous in respect of the estimation variable, because homogeneity is a very tricky term. A particular group or a particular stratum or a particular cluster may be perfectly homogeneous in respect of one variable and may be quite heterogeneous in respect of another variable. Therefore, unless we fix up the variable to be considered, the estimation variable that I have talked of, we should not talk about homogeneity or heterogeneity. And I define the estimation variable, and I know that I'm talking of homogeneity in respect of that particular estimation variable only. I have to identify groups or clusters or strata which are homogeneous in respect of the estimation variable. If they are naturally defined, fine, I will take advantage of those strata. If they are not, I will have to construct or develop strata. That's the first problem. And this stratification may be carried out in several stages. As I said, we normally take recourse to multi-stage sampling. So whatever stage we are in at a particular aspect of the sampling design, we may talk of stratification. And the second is, once you have got the strata identified or constructed depending on the situation, we have a total sample size specified on certain considerations, which for the time being I am taking for granted I will have to allocate that sample size across the strata. That's the usual allocation problem. Apparently, these are the two problems, the problem of stratification and the problem of allocation. The problem of allocation, namely the problem of allocating the total sample size across the identified or the constructed strata, that should be also taken along with the problem of determining the overall sample size. In a very simple setup, we take that for granted, but in real life, we may have to also solve that problem. What should be the sample size, the overall sample size for a survey? Let me come back to the first problem of stratification. This is a problem which is not very generally talked of because of very well-established reasons that quite often the strata are already identified. They could be with natural boundaries, like they could be districts, or they could be metropolitan cities as distinct from other cities, etc. So they are already identified in terms of some natural features. But in many situations in real life, strata are not already identified. For example, in the case of a survey on domestic workers, if I have to locate a stratum in terms of a location, in terms of a certain region, which is likely to have more domestic workers residing there, or more domestic workers serving the households there compared to another, then the strata are not already identified. I cannot say that different villages or different towns or large cities or large towns, they are distinct strata as distinct from poor villages, etc. Suppose I want to estimate the average income in a particular block of a certain town. It's heterogeneous, and I want to stratify that block or that town or that village into several strata, so as to get strata which are more homogeneous in respect of incomes. Income varies continuously, and how do I form the strata? Based on some idea about the income variable or some associated variable. So I have to identify some variable which is associated with income, and then making use of the knowledge available about that associated variable, I have to form homogeneous strata. So developing strata is a problem by itself. For example, I talked of stratifying households, and depending on the objectives of the survey, stratification of the households may also be done on the basis of maybe number of members in the household. In some surveys, it could be number of members who are educated at least up to a certain level as the stratification variable. Depending on the purpose of the survey, the stratification variable could be the number of individuals aged 15 plus. It all depends on the objectives of the survey or the purpose of the survey, which stratification variable I will choose. I'm talking of stratifying households in a village or in a town, and depending on the purpose of the survey, I'm thinking of alternative stratification variables. Number one was number of members in the household aged 15 plus. Why 15 plus? Because in most surveys related to labor force participation or employment, unemployment, etc., normally we consider as the eligible age group 15 plus. Therefore, one may be interested to stratify households based on the number of members aged 15 plus. One may consider a stratification variable as a number of members who are literate. If it is an employment, unemployment survey, we may adopt some definition of literacy. I'm not going into that. And then we can have the number of individuals who are literate as a stratification variable. That way, the choice of the stratification variable is important. And once we have decided on the stratification variable, the next question will be This is not uniquely done. Depending on the purpose of the survey, one may think of several alternative stratification variables, and it remains a problem to choose one out of those possible alternative choices. One should not, one cannot, and one normally does not say this is the best without making some further analysis. I will hint at those possible forms of analysis. The second question does arise is how many strata? Suppose I am looking at the number of members aged 15 plus. This number will vary from household to household. Based on this, how many strata I would like to form. That also something comparable to what normally people call supervised learning, unsupervised learning, supervised clustering, unsupervised clustering in a different context is also a particular issue on which no one can immediately jump on to a certain number. It also depends on experience, exigencies, and some other requirements. So that way, we decide on the number of strata or the number of clusters. The third question, and a very important question, is what should be the stratum boundaries? I've talked of the number of members aged 15 plus. And I have decided on, let us say, 4 boundaries. 4 strata. How do I define the strata now? How do I identify them? No unique way. No unique way. I could say, well, it could be 0 as one stratum, 1 and 2, second stratum, 3, 4, and 5, another stratum, 6 and above. That's the last stratum. This is one possibility. No one can immediately reject it. No one should immediately accept it. All these 3, namely the choice of the stratification variable, the number of strata to be ultimately built up, and the choice of the stratum boundaries cannot be uniquely done. Number 1. And one can think of at least what may be called an optimal choice. Optimality is a tricky term. I've been in the field of optimization for about 40 years, as some of my students know about. And I know this is a very tricky term because optimality by a particular criterion may become absolutely non-optimal judged by a different criterion. So unless one is sure about the criterion for optimality, nothing is optimal on earth. Optimality is a very tricky and vague term. And nothing is optimal by all criteria possible. I can immediately think of any criterion to just say that anything already talked of as optimal is definitely not optimal. So these are 3 particular points that I would like to raise in the use of stratified sampling, particularly dealing with identification or construction of strata. And I do remember that there were early works, including one work possibly by, Bimal may correct me if I'm wrong or somebody else may correct me, a paper by Hansen and Gorley, a very early paper in which an attempt was made to construct boundaries for a continuous variable, a continuous associated variable, to find out the boundaries for the strata in respect of stratification to achieve the minimum variance for the estimated mean or the estimated total. That was a very early work in regard to optimum stratification. Even Professor Moranovich did some work in this area, but that was purely on a cost consideration. He ultimately referred to certain cost figures which were taken up to formulate 2 laws, typically called the Fairfield-Smith law and the Jensen's law. These are also applied to formulate optimal boundaries for strata, but these were not able to ensure optimality in respect of the variance of the estimate of the mean or the total. Therefore, several types of works have gone by to find out optimal construction of strata. This remains a live problem even today. Even today, no one has come to a universally agreed method for constructing optimal boundaries for strata based on any type of variable, not necessarily a continuous variable associated with the estimation variable. Particularly, we deal with categorical variables quite often. We deal with continuous variables, no doubt also, but you cannot rule out that we are dealing with categorical variables as well. And even dealing with such quantitative variables or numerical variables as the number of members who are literate or who are aged beyond 15 or who are having a certain minimum income, etc., etc., one cannot come to a unique choice of the strata. This remains a big problem. Theoretically, this remains a problem, as I said, a research problem, simply because we have umpteen criteria for optimality. We have got umpteen methods for determining the optimal in regard to even one single criterion. And there are many complicating factors which I will come up at the end of my presentation. Considering the real life situations, all those complicating factors come up, and we really cannot claim any design developed so far anywhere in the world to be really optimal. We have to take it always with a pinch of salt. The choice of the variable, the choice of the criterion for optimality, the optimality method, and certain other issues I will point out at the end. The next point that comes is very well known to us is the optimality of allocation, the optimal allocation problem. And that too, for the time being, let us take for granted that the total sample size is given, although this is also a very tricky question, but suppose the sample size is given. Then to allocate it over the identified strata or the constructed strata, we have usually the methods called proportional allocation, we have got the Bowlby allocation or the Neyman allocation. The proportional allocation does not consider variability and that way homogeneity or heterogeneity of the different strata. Although our primary purpose to develop strata was to ensure that they are internally homogeneous as far as possible. And therefore, proportional allocation is not that well accepted as a principle. We go in for methods which try to make use of variability for the different strata, indicating indirectly homogeneity. And in the optimal allocation, one may also take into account the cost factor, the cost of sampling per unit within each stratum. However, for theoretical purposes and with no loss of generality, I can take for granted the cost, the unit cost per sampling within each stratum to be identical, and that will not at all distract our attention from optimality. So for the time being, I lay focus on making use of estimates of variability of the different strata in determining the optimal sample size. We all know the formula. We multiply the stratum size by the corresponding variance and the standard deviation of the estimation variable and divide by the total, multiplied by the total sample size, and that gives me the subsample size for the particular stratum. That's very easy, even known to the students who are possibly joining us in this program. Now look at that particular formula. Very innocuous, very simple. But then look at some practical problems which people who try to make use of it will face. The first problem, the formula as such does not ensure that the sample size becomes an integer for all the strata. It can easily become a fraction. What do? Oh, an easy answer. We approximate. Approximation rules tell us that if the subsample size has come out to be 15.3, you make it 15. If it has come out to be 15.8, you make it 16. To all such approximation users, I may simply give an warning. The warning is, if you use these approximation rules, with which we are all familiar, there is no guarantee, I repeat thrice, no guarantee that this allocation ensures the minimum possible variance of the estimate of the mean of the total, the parameter that you are going to estimate. I repeat thrice, no guarantee by the usual approximation formula if the sample size given by this formula comes out to be non-integral. That is the first deficiency. Okay, The second deficiency. The deficiency occurred because the approach adopted for minimizing the variance of the estimate of the population parameter did not explicitly take into account the integer requirement as a constraint. Why? Because the people who are dealing with this formula, who are developing this formula, who are revising this formula, who are modifying this formula, they were not so familiar, pardon me for my ignorance of their knowledge, or excuse me for my making a very bad remark, they were not making use of what is typically called a complicated nonlinear integer programming method for optimization. Nonlinear integer programming is a very difficult one, often has to be solved by what are called in terms of NP-hard problems. Computationally complex problems are involved, and they have been generally avoided. Anyway, my point was that that leads to non-integer situations where usual approximation rules to convert them to integers fail to guarantee minimality of the estimated variance of the estimate. The second, I can construct, I have constructed already, and I can tell you some simple examples which may appear to be somewhat pathological of situations where there are a small strata which have got large variability of that particular estimation variable, and there are much larger strata which are much more homogeneous in respect of the estimation variable. Apply this formula, and no wonder you will come up with a subsample size that exceeds the stratum size. The sample size for a particular stratum, the subsample size, will exceed the stratum size. No wonder, because this has not been made explicitly a constraint in the formulation of the optimization problem. Because we have not made use of, I repeat, nonlinear integer programming optimization methods, which are computationally complex in determining the optimal allocation formula so far within my limited knowledge. I stand up to correction. Similarly, it is also possible that in some cases you will find that the subsample size for a very pathologically bad stratum size may even take up the entire sample size to be allocated, disallowing any of the other strata to be included in your sample. Again, the deficiency arises from the neglect of the constraint that should be taken into account. So because of the lack of formulation of the optimization problem as a nonlinear integer programming problem, many deficiencies have surfaced, and I have been noting these for several years in the past and trying to locate the types of work that have been done recently to overcome these problems. I've seen some problems like the problem of non-integer subsample sizes and large subsample sizes even exceeding the stratum sizes being tackled by some researchers in the US population group, and that way they have not directly applied nonlinear integer programming but have come up with certain rules which are not foolproof, as I have examined, to avoid those unfortunate situations. But anyway, I will just make a plea that those who are familiar with nonlinear integer programming, those who are quite adept in running computer programs, they can try out to incorporate certain constraints, which definitely I can help them with to formulate, to make it a problem which, when solved, maybe with great computational complexity, will avoid the difficulties that I am talking of. This is a very interesting problem for researchers and completely open still today. The question that is linked up with this optimal allocation is a problem that is not directly linked with stratified sampling only. As I said, to picks up the total sample size. This I have been facing recently while trying to help a Government of India ministry to determine the sample size, and I find Swaraj, who is pretty knowledgeable in this field, present. Vikas is also quite involved here, Bimal definitely. The total sample size for a survey. The total sample size for a survey, and I'm talking of, I repeat, I'm talking of the simplest possible situation, which is quite unrealistic today. I've got only one parameter to be estimated in respect of only one variable, nothing else. In reality, we deal with many complicated situations, much more complicated than what I'm talking of. And you can't imagine how complicated optimization problems will be involved in those real life situations. Now, coming to only one parameter to be estimated, how do we go about it in practice or in real life to determine the sample size? We normally talk about the relative standard error. We take it for granted that it should not exceed some limit like a 10% or a 5% or a 15%, something of that sort limit. So this is relative standard error for the estimate of the parameter to be derived from the survey that we are going to plan, for which we are going to find out the sample size. And the relative standard error, let us fix up as 0.10. Remember, the relative standard error, if I am going to estimate a total or going to estimate a mean, will depend essentially, or in fact entirely, on the coefficient of variation, right? And if it is a proportion, it depends on the unknown population proportion. The relative standard error is a parametric function, is a function of the unknown parameters, including the parameter that I am going to estimate through the survey, for which I am going to determine the sample size. I am going to determine the sample size for a survey. The survey is to yield an estimate of a parameter which is unknown, and the relative standard error is a function of that unknown parameter. So what do? We have to do something. And imagine there are situations, and there could be situations, and I am facing a situation currently where there has been no benchmark survey earlier to provide me with a guide value, with a reasonably good guide value for the unknown parameter. So what do? I'm really at a loss. Believe me, I have been spending hours and hours these days because I'm completely stuck up at home, some free time. And this free time I've been utilizing to scratch my head to help the government to find out some suitable sample size. I know sample size does not depend only on a theory, it also depends on resource considerations. That of course is secondary to me. But primary, if I try to adopt the usual approach of RAC, how do I get an RAC idea? Because there is no benchmark survey. A survey on migrant workers, a survey on domestic workers have not been attempted earlier, exclusively meant for them. They also are trying to get a survey on workers engaged by professionals, like workers who are engaged by chartered accountants, by legal professionals, etc. No idea. They make use of RAC in a very loose way. I've talked to many very senior officers in the Indian statistical system. RAC is a parametric function. Parameter is unknown. Benchmark surveys might not have been carried out. And even if I get hold of some benchmark survey, I get only an approximate idea, which may or may not be valid for the particular survey. And then comes the question of using what is typically called the design effect. The design effect is not popularly known among students of sample surveys, and even among those who teach the topic of survey sampling in colleges or even in university departments, but even pretty well known among those who use it. The design effect takes into account the effect of the fact that we are going to determine the standard error or the relative standard error of the estimate of a parameter based on a sampling design which is not simple random sampling. Whereas the formula that we are going to make use of is based on simple random sampling. Therefore, there will be definitely an enhancement in the standard error and hence in the relative standard error if you make use of any other sampling design other than simple random sampling. This is the the simple consideration of the design effect. Okay, so you have a multi-stage stratified sampling design, and that must definitely enhance or inflate the standard error and hence the relative standard error as well. To what extent? That is given by what is called the design effect. The design effect as a multiplier of the standard error or the relative standard error is the square root of a product, the product of two factors. One is the intra-class correlation in respect of the estimation variable within a cluster. We are talking of homogeneous clusters. And the other is n-1. N is the average size of a cluster. None of these two is known to me. None of these two is known to me. Neither the intra-class correlation averaged over the clusters that are going to be formed or that have been already identified, and not even sometimes the average size of a cluster. So how do I know the design effect? I've gone through many internationally designed and planned surveys in many developed countries of the West. And I come across a wide range of design effect figures taken into account, running from 1.5 to 2.5. 1.8 has been a very popularly accepted figure. I checked with some of the officials in the Indian statistical system, and some of them, without knowing my little knowledge about the subject, once told me, "Sir, we have done this." Then I cross-checked and found they have done nothing. They have done nothing at all. That fellow somehow thought that I am completely ignorant of design effect. So told me that, yes, sir, this has been done. This cannot be done easily because the definition says it is the product of under root, of course, the average sample size, cluster size -1 into the average intra-class correlation, not interclass. The average intra-class correlation within a cluster. Nothing has been done. Only some guess values has been done in terms of past data. How? How was the sampling variance inflated by the design adopted? That's again a very indirect, a very crude way of judging the design effect and getting at a figure. Nothing beyond that. Even in the West, nothing beyond this has been attempted. Bimal may clarify or may answer me or repudiate or even tell me that I'm completely wrong. So that's the difficulty in determining the sample size. And I'm really nowadays very much worried about how people can solve such problems. It's easy to talk about advantages of many methods of sampling, no doubt. I'm not talking of procedures of estimation, because there are people who are more knowledgeable, I'm sure about it, who know much more than me about methods of estimation, deriving much better estimates than what I know about. But then the point is, estimation is based on surveys. And how do I conduct the surveys? These are problems which are invariably involved in the planning of the survey. So my point was, how do I make use of a very common, a very popular method of sampling, Lumby stratified sampling, for planning and executing large-scale national sample surveys. And the 3 points that I have raised, so far as theory is concerned, are left more or less open. And I now go to the broader areas, namely, what are theoretically far more challenging are the fact that no survey in the world is a univariate survey. No survey in the world nowadays, we cannot waste our money and time to collect only one information item in respect of the responding units. So no survey is a univariate survey. No survey is meant to estimate only one parameter. So what do we do with multivariate surveys and multi-parameter estimation problems? A very difficult one. I tried to look at a univariate survey, but multi-parameter one. So for example, in respect of the same variable, I can talk of a distribution, one distribution only, and I'll like to talk about 2-3 parameters, namely maybe 2-3 percentiles or 2-3 quantiles, or maybe a measure of variability along with the average, something of that sort. So what have I to do? I have to talk of what may be called the generalized variance, I have to talk about what is the determinant of the generalized variance. I have to handle that determinant as a function of the choice of the boundaries and so on, which is hell of a problem. Even a very well-known, very strong computer scientist told me that it takes, I formulated the problem for him, and he said, within a month I cannot solve you, sir. Within a month I cannot give you the answer. And this is only one variable, several parameters to be estimated. I'm talking of the determinant of the generalized variance regarded as a function of the stratum boundaries of a continuous variable linked up with the estimation variable. What happens with several variables, I do not know. I looked at some applications of some approximations to this made by several well-known statisticians quite early, in the 50s, including one somewhat later by one of my own contemporaries in the Presidency College and in the University of Calcutta, Shampreet Chatterjee. Shampreet did some early work, but that to me looks to be quite innocuous, quite innocent, doesn't answer my question. Some early works by Professor J.K. Ghosh, Professor M.N. Ghosh, both of which appear in the Calcutta Statistical Association Bulletin. They were also very elementary. They don't satisfy me. I came across a very recent paper in the Calcutta Statistical Association Bulletin by a group of workers who know more about optimization in the Aligarh Muslim University that appeared in CSA Bulletin. That is also not so good, but even much better than many of the earlier works. I was recently looking at a paper published in 2018 by two research workers, Rizvi and Danish, in a journal called Applied Mathematics and Information Sciences Letters, volume 6, number 1, pages 27 to 36. I looked at the abstract only, could not get hold of the journal as yet. And I found that they have attempted something like a survey of all earlier work by computer scientists in this area. But again, to my little understanding, it's not a complete solution as yet. So to come back to the problem that I posed, is that to make use of real life application of stratified sampling to plan and execute moderately large national sample surveys, which are all multivariate, definitely multi-parameter, is a problem which should engage attention of students, teachers, and research workers all over the world. I stop for the time being. We'll be happy to answer simple questions posed to me, because difficult questions I may not be able to answer. Thank you all. I'm overwhelmed.
We would like to express our sincere thanks to Professor Mukherjee for taking time out of his schedule and giving us an excellent coverage to some problems in using stratified sampling. We will now have a short question-answer session. I'll request the participants to write their questions to the speaker in the comment box. So we have a question from Shubhrodev Shen. Can we have a glimpse of multivariate situation, sir?
I really cannot present a glimpse because, as I said, in the multivariate case, it's so complicated. Possibly you cannot imagine, in the sense that for each separate variable, it's a multivariate survey you mentioned. For each variable, if it is an estimation variable, not an auxiliary one, because I am not talking of estimation, I am not talking of auxiliary variables. So if it is an estimation variable, for each estimation variable, there will be at least one parameter to be estimated, and you will deal with a multi-parameter situation about which I gave you some hint how complicated problems become. And I mean, I will have to talk on hours and hours together to give you a glimpse of what we mean by problems in using stratified sampling, particularly for determining optimal allocation if you are dealing with multivariate, essentially multi-parameter estimation surveys.
Thank you, sir. We have a question from Dr. Sauraj Nath. What to do in case of multiple variables where some are rare variables?
I couldn't exactly get at what Sauraj means by real variables.
So rare variables, rare.
Rare, oh, I see, rare variables. By rare variables, I can definitely appreciate the fact that the rare variables will be difficult in terms of even trying to get the sample of a required size. For rare variables, to get data of a required minimum sample size for a rare variable is by itself a very difficult problem. And for that purpose, as Sauraj knows, we take recourse to sometimes non-probability sampling without restricting ourselves to probability sampling, like snowball sampling or chain referral methods, etc., to just ensure a minimum sample size if the variable is a very rare variable. And once it's a rare variable, again, if it is a single parameter, we are back to the same problem, particularly because if the rare variable is to be identified with the help of an auxiliary variable, and that we have to make use of in determining the stratum boundaries, we are back to the same problems. Otherwise, if we are trying to identify, or rather getting data on rare variables through a mechanism like identifying networks, when you go to referral sampling or snowball sampling, we first try to identify small networks. These networks are not clusters, and these networks themselves can be regarded as starting points, and we can possibly take the networks themselves as corresponding to units, and therefore take the totality of the networks as the sample and avoid many of the difficulties. Or at the best, we can take each network along with the referrals originating from a particular network as one particular stratum. So we may try to identify several networks first of all, where we can get some information about the rare variables, and then coming to each network, we can apply referrals, and taking the referenced individuals together, we can form a stratum. So that way each network initially identified may be taken as I feel, a possible stratum. I was suggesting some such procedure to even the Ministry of Labour and Employment, although there were some from the National Statistical System who were raising doubts. I know there can be doubts about any non-probability sampling being raised by anyone who have been using probability sampling. But where probability sampling does not at all apply, what else do we do except to recourse to such non-probability sampling?
Thank you, sir. We have another question from Srinivasan Ravi. What do you think of Abhijit Banerjee and Duflo's work on migrant workers?
That will take a long time to answer. It was a survey mandated by the Ministry of Labour and Employment, in fact mandated by the Parliament to the Ministry, and the Ministry appointed a a group called an expert group in their terminology. I've been unfortunately made the chairman with a number of other statisticians, with a number of other very vocal economists, and a few other bureaucrats. And anyway, I have to steer clear of those handicaps. I'm trying to adopt a design, but I'm getting stuck up with these problems that I'm telling you, trying to solve as approximately as possible, as reasonably as well, some of these problems. But to discuss in the sampling design fully, it will take a pretty long time. There was one question from Onkar.
Yes, sir. The one
Can
last
you-
question from Onkar Da.
What
In
was
many
it?
situations, oversampling is made from some strata. What can be the consequences?
That's a different question altogether. But then, as I said, theory alone, whatever formula you develop, whether this is a formula for optimal allocation, optimally developed or not, is not the only way to really get a sample. Because sample selection is a matter of judgment as well. It may become too small, it may become too large. Sometimes applying a formula you undersample, sometimes applying a formula you get oversampling. So sampling is not simply left to theory, it's also left to your wisdom. And therefore, I would say that if it is oversampling, you make use of your knowledge, of your domain knowledge, in fact, about the variable, about the problem to be solved, the purpose of the survey, etc., to cut it down. And once you cut it down, you may possibly allocate the available extra sample size to other samples, etc.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm afraid we will not be able to take in any more questions today. We would like to thank all of you for your active participation in today's lecture. We now have an announcement. The second lecture in this lecture series for propagation of statistics, education, and research will be delivered by Professor Bikash K. Sinha, former Professor of Statistics, Indian Statistical Institute, Kolkata, and former President of Calcutta Statistical Association on 9th July 2021 at 7 p.m. The topic of the lecture is Social Network Analysis for Understanding of Animal Behavior. We would like to invite all of you to join us for the second lecture as well. We would like to thank all the members of the committee formed for this outreach program. We thank the convener, Dr. Shumanto Addo, West Bengal State University. We would like to thank Dr. Arindam Gupta, University of Burdwan, Dr. Saptoshi Mondol, Beton College, Mr. Shuhin Shubra Bhattacharya, Haldia Government College, and Dr. Hare Krishna Maiti, Alian University, for providing all the technical support. Once again, we apologize for not being able to include all of you in the Google Meet. We'll try to resolve this issue in future. We thank all of you again for joining us today. Looking forward to seeing you in the next lecture. Goodbye and stay safe.
Greetings and best wishes to all of you. I'm so glad to meet all of you, my former students and acquaintances and colleagues. Very, very glad to meet all of you.
Thank you, Professor Mukherjee. That was a fantastic talk. Reminded me of the time when I was your student, how clear this was, how beautifully I could understand the difficulties at a very basic level. So thank you again very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dipen. Glad to meet you once again sometimes. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.